I was hoping today that we'd actually get into it and like figure out, try to finalize what it is what our top priorities are for this month, and see if we can like get some ownership around that, who's doing what. Before we get into the check-in, does anybody have any other things you'd like to add to the agenda today?
I suddenly can't hear anything anymore.
Yeah, if you're on mute, Gideon, if you're talking.
Maybe Gideon got disconnected. Let's see if we could share the agenda.
Oh, sorry. I muted
cool.
myself. Sorry. I thought you were talking about the music thing. Jeez. All right. User error. I was just saying, sorry about that. I just want you to know that what I was talking about was extremely eloquent. No, I was just saying that the agenda is now in the chat, and I was saying that if you'll see in the agenda that there's a link in there to the shared playlist for on Spotify, so anybody can add to the playlist. Feel free to do so. Like, this shouldn't just be me picking songs that I like. Just go ahead and add onto it if you feel so inspired. Okay, having gotten that really critical thing out, I thought that we would. So, other question is, does anybody have any items to add to the agenda today? 5, 4.
I have a
3.
question.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. And is that I see that the common pool grew between December and January, and that like made some proposals pass, even like the proposal of gravity passed. But yeah, I still don't know what was the main reason of this common pool growing. I don't know if some of you know more about this. I don't know if we had someone buying a lot of TEC, or yeah, how did the common pool grow?
I do not know, Honka. I don't know. I'm looking right now to see. That's news to me. I'm not seeing it grow.
Seems like on the, it seems like yesterday, at least actually on the 12th of December, someone sold around 30K worth of TC, and yesterday around 25K more. So that's probably why.
Well, I think that those correspond to the gravity proposal passing, and then probably the academy.
Yeah, my bad. I was looking at the common pool balance instead of the token sales and buys. But yeah, it doesn't seem to be any big enough movement to really grow the common pool significantly.
Yeah, Honka, where are you seeing the growth there? Because I'm not seeing it in the data.
In the gardens, last year, we got to 400K, 490K almost, and today we are in 582K. And the gravity proposal passed, so it means that we were almost in 600K. And yeah, the Support the Academy Part 2 is also passing. It was really a surprise to me that the gravity proposal passed, because I didn't know that this common pool change, about this common pool change, and the common pool change also lowered the conviction voting requirements, so we eventually passed with the support that we had.
I think I have an explanation. I was talking with Griff about this yesterday. I think that what happened is people took their funds off of Abstain for a little while, probably as a result of the Token Engineering Academy proposal. And when that passed, I think a bunch of stuff was taken off of Abstain and it went back into the pool. That's my guess. Because if you look at Dune Analytics, it has not changed. The overall common pool funds have not changed. So I think it's just what's actually available for voting.
Yeah, I mean, the abstain changes the voting, but the abstain, I don't think, doesn't affect the common pool. But yeah, it's a mystery. I still don't know, but yeah, I was just raising it here. Or maybe it's my mistake, but yeah, I remember that last year we were on a high 400K, and today we are on a high 500K, even after some proposals passed.
I don't know. We can look into it. I don't have a good answer. I do think it has something to do with Abstain. That's probably how things passed. That's probably how the gravity proposal passed, got unstuck, but I'm not sure. And yeah, Tam, you're asking if that's the best link. Yes, that's the one I use. Okay, let's do a check-in. The question is, what TEC work is most exciting to you right now? Nate, how about you?
I'm going to be biased and say that it's the interest groups for sure. I'm just really excited to see how this will work, especially alongside the TEA and their study groups, and see if we can get some interest around these niche categories to really kind of be the shelling point for a lot of token engineering topics and discussions. So I'm really excited about that. So I'll pass it over to you, MT.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll go with the same. I think a lot of the things we've been working on, like the creation service or whatever, ends up being like the interest groups end up being like the perfect collection of everything, of like a perfect example of how can we use everything we've been working on to just help the field overall, which I think is pretty cool. With that, I'll pass it over to S Laser.
Sorry, which was the question? I'm kind of distracted because
The question is,
yeah.
the question is, what TEC work is most exciting to you right now?
Maybe the thing we are making to restructure the community value that we used to have, and I think that we are evolving a lot in that, and I'm feeling good about it. Everyone working for a mission, and that's really cool. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be an a new year with you guys, and I think that we are making good work. Yeah. I'll pass it to Bear.
Thanks, that's it. Yeah, for me, I think I'm also gonna be a little biased. I think all these roles thing, it's been really excited for me, and also probably this project of the whole strategy for the TEC more in a long term. That's also something I'm really excited to do. Yeah, I don't know, everything to do like with setting the basis and the organizational design and organizational structure. Those are the things that I really enjoy doing, you know, to try to plant seeds that actually help people to create value and to work and collaborate better. So yeah, that excites me. I'll pass it to Tam.
You'll pass it to me, but I'm just gonna say what Bear said. I've been thinking about this. You know, my first thought was like, well, everyone else was talking, and it's like I'm really excited about seeing the TEA and the TEC come together as one community and you know, one organization. But then I'm like, I really love seeing this coordination transformation, this sort of organization transformation, and that's kind of the stuff that I like to geek on. And I think that it's a team with such cool potential, and I think that there's going to be a lot that this team can achieve this year. So I'm actually really excited about the people that are here moving things forward in the TEC. That's what I'm excited about. Nate, you didn't go yet. Oh, Nate, you went. Who didn't go? Henny Art, if you want to take a crack at this question.
Yeah, I'll take a quick crack. Probably a new face on the server, but I'm definitely I'm definitely excited about the interest groups, especially what they come up with and the new findings that they've researched and stuff like that. That's the most exciting thing for me at the moment. And I definitely want to like take part in starting from like next week. Definitely.
Cool, thank you. Wonka, how about you?
Sure. Well, I am super excited about the second push of Gravity. I think we want to learn from the mistakes. We want to learn from our experience. We are very thankful for the TC for supporting us and making the best use of the resources, thinking in the most sustainable way, learning a lot from the TA, focusing more on education. Yeah, I was like a little bit anxious, but I feel right now with a lot of renewed energies, and I liked a lot the holidays. I think it was a good moment to close and open new cycles.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. For me right now, the thing that I'm most excited about is the strategy. Just like figuring out a way to just like very clearly and succinctly say what it is that we do, and doing that with kind of an 80-20 rule, like not overdoing it, just keeping it simple, but like really trying to get some clarity. I think that's, to me, that's very exciting. Also, if I can add one more, I'm really excited about the academy. I just think that there's like integration, like doing a tighter partnership with the academy. There's just so much potential there, particularly around the token utility, but also just like, I mean, it's just, there's just so much potential to connect these two entities. So I'm really excited about that. Okay, so one thing I wanted to do is just, can we just do some quick updates? NT, would you mind just kind of giving folks a quick update on like what's happening with the curation service, especially as it relates to the conversation we had with the team yesterday?
Sure. Yeah. So, well, the common sense guys had a minor issue with the service last week. They are already working on it. I don't think I don't think we have to go too deep into that. What it's more challenging is that they were working with a group called Tangible AI, and the situation between them and within each of the organizations kind of changed, and so there's some uncertainties, or they are facing some challenges on how to continue developing the service. And so we were talking, and we are talking about we're exploring options to see how can we help them, and vice versa, to keep developing the product and providing value. That said, and if I understand correctly, what we have running now uh, won't change. Like most of the challenges is for future development, but what we have now is it's already there. It's a matter of maintaining it, and yeah, I think it's it. You tell me, Gideon, if you can think of something else that can be important to add, but yep.
No, I think that pretty much captures it. Yeah, I mean, I think we have some good options for carrying it forward. There are some other folks who are kind of stepping up that might be good partners to help carry this forward. But yeah, I mean, I think NT's got it. It's like we've got enough right now. It's really more about getting engagement around the service. So. Okay, thanks, NT. And Nate, do you want to give just a quick update on interest groups? What's going on there? So you had a good meeting the other day.
Yeah, so yesterday we had our first interest group development meeting, which went really, really well. Thank you for everybody who joined. We went over our interest groups 1.0 document, which kind of outlined the purpose and the strategy behind the interest groups. This week we'll be currently working to discuss with Angela and the TEA and how to best integrate interest groups with their study groups and other initiatives that they have over there at the academy. And then next week we will host our first orientation call for interest group leaders. We will maintain the open call for interest group creation through our submission form. And that is it at the moment. And if you are interested, or nobody who is interested, I can share the form with you and send that out to people. I think that Acid Laser has done a really good job so far in promoting the tweets, but if you could keep promoting that within your own personal Twitter, that would be great too. But yeah, that's it for now.
Okay, thank you. So we're now going to turn to this thing that Bear's been working on. I've been kind of helping him refine some of this stuff. It's just a couple things that are worth noting. Because we're coming out of this transformation process. We're having to strike this balance between figuring out what the new processes are for coordinating the TEC and then actually getting work done. So that's the tension that we're facing. We'll probably always face this to some degree because there's just always some type of coordination cost for running any kind of organization. So but it's kind of heavy right now. So I just want to just frame that up front as kind of where we are. We've come from a structure that was very working group centric, and we're moving to something that's a little bit different. And so, that comes with some effort in trying to kind of redefine what those processes look like. And we're trying to do it in a way that doesn't reinvent the wheel and reinvent everything. But there are a few differences in kind of this new model that we're moving to. It basically kind of centers around two basic ideas. One is roles, which is the kind of ongoing processes that we know about, right? That we've identified as essential to keeping the TEC running. And then there's kind of these things that are constantly coming up that are new challenges that we need to solve. And we're thinking about this more as projects. and project coordination or project management. So rather than me going any further into this, I'm going to turn it over to Bear because he's been thinking pretty deeply about this. Bear?
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. Yes, I think it's really important what you mentioned, like to provide that context. That I feel that at the end, what we're doing here in the TEC, and not just what we want to do, but the way we want to do it, that follows these kind of like DAO principles of decentralization, of autonomy, of permissionless. Like I feel that these things are completely incredible, but they do add like a layer of complexity to everything we do, especially in terms of coordination and communication, right? It makes things a little harder for people to maybe to grasp or to assimilate. And yeah, I think it takes more time to get to that point. But hopefully with this, the intention is the idea and the intention is always to help the people here, the contributors, the people who is actually interested and passionate in contributing to this, to do it in a more clear, on a more simple, on a more sustainable way. So that's been the intention in all the work that I've been doing and we've all been doing. And for now, yes, I'm seeing the TEC having two types of contributions, like Gideon said. Some of them being, recurring contributions, recurring tasks or activities that they need to be constantly done by someone. And then on the other hand, projects, like new stuff that just comes up suddenly and it has a beginning date and an end date, right? So I see these two as different type of contributions that we need to deal with. What I've been focusing on, it's more on the recurring type of contributions and trying to come up with a system, a way in which we can easily manage that type of work. And I think roles could be a really helpful way to that. So here on the chat, I'm just gonna share a link to the doc that I've been working on. It's also on the agenda if people prefer to access it from there. But I'll just share it here anyways. Just give me a second. And basically, what I would like us to do during this call, I shared this doc yesterday. I don't know if people had chance to look at it and review the roles that I'm stating there. Currently, there are 20 roles that I'm suggesting that we have. They are all built based on the needs that we are already identified in the TEC, or based on activities that the members of the coordination team are already doing. The idea with this is just to kind of like formalize and really set the boundaries also in a way for each of the roles, for people to feel more clear and also more free to know what they're doing and to know what's their working space in a way, And I feel doing this can also add some levels of accountability that are also something that we said we wanted to achieve in the proposal for the coordination team. So I think this idea of roles adds to that concept of accountability. And what I would like us to do, there are 20 roles. They are, you have to take your time to read them all. But maybe what we can do is just to go really quickly through all of them and just read the purpose. It's just like one sentence for each. I think it would be interesting for people to listen to that and to start thinking about, oh yeah, I think that makes sense. I think a role doing that makes sense. Or maybe at the end you realize that we are missing some important role here, and we can get that feedback in order to do those changes. The point is just to get some type of consensus in the roles that we should establish. I'm thinking that at least for the next 3 months, I feel that should be a good date to have in mind. Another important thing to always keep in mind is that this, of course, it's a suggestion, a proposal, but if we decide to do it or not this way, it's important to remember that this is meant to be flexible and dynamic, right? So nothing is set in stone. On the contrary, the idea is to start doing it, start experimenting with it, and then adjust accordingly throughout the way, right? So that's why I'm setting, like 3 months. We can start doing the work with these roles and see how we go, how we progress with the work, doing it this way, and then we can evaluate and readjust, right? So yeah, I don't know if anyone has any questions or any comments before we can start reviewing the different roles that are here.
Hey, Bear, can I just add one thing? One thing you'll note is that, some of these roles are very specific, and you might say like, wow, why are we calling this out as a specific role? Like, that's not a job, right? The idea is these are not jobs. These are some specific sets of, like packages of functions that need to happen in the organization. And so we are capturing those things so that we know, regardless of who's playing that role, that this is something that we really need, that the TEC needs in order to function. So some of these things may seem very detailed, some may seem broader and like wow, that's a lot more work. That role is much bigger than this other role. So try not to think of this as like jobs. These are more like packages of functions, organizational functions.
Yeah, that's really important to mention. The idea is not to depend on names, but to depend on roles, right? So anyone, even if the members of the team decide to leave one day, we are sure that someone else can take on these specific tasks, and the TEC will be able to continue operating, right? That's also part of the idea. Okay, so well, all the roles, the 20 roles, are divided by 6 areas. One of them being strategic planning and organizational development, economic development and service operations, community organizing, stakeholders communication, technology support, and finance and accounting. So let's say those are the areas where all of these roles live in a way. You can just use the, I don't know how you call it, like the index or like the menu on the left in the doc to see all the docs and all the areas, so you can navigate it easily if you want to look at one particular role. And to begin with, we have the project management lead with the purpose of establishing and maintaining processes and practices that will be used to plan, execute, and coordinate projects within the organization. We have the accountability lead to create and maintain standards for accountability that will be expected from all contributors in the TEC. The roles manager, define and manage the roles and responsibility of contributors within the TEC. Partnerships manager, develop and maintain relationships with the TEC's partners, which can include other organizations, businesses, or individuals. Strategic planner, help the TEC achieve its long-term objectives by developing and executing effective plans and strategies. The payer, manage the process of paying to contributors and for goods or services. Then moving to this other area of economic development and service operations is the curation service operator, coordinate and operate day-to-day operations for the curation service. Moving on to community organizing, it's the interest groups coordinator, provide support and coordinate the creation and operations of interest groups. The events planner, organize community events across the TEC. Stakeholder communication area, we have the marketing communications strategist, create and distribute messages that effectively promote the TEC's value offering to its target audience. Number 11, social media operator, manage and operate the TEC's Twitter, LinkedIn, and other social media accounts. Twitter content creator, create and produce original content for the TEC's Twitter account. technology support area, we have the credentials manager, create, review, and maintain credential management best practices. Platforms manager, ensure that the platforms and systems used by the TEC are functioning properly and efficiently. Multisigs manager, review and maintain best practices in the use of multisigs. Data analyst, collect, organize, and analyze data to provide insights and inform decision-making in the TEC. Dependencies analyst, identify and analyze the dependencies within the TEC in order to improve efficiency, reduce the risks, and identify opportunities for improvement. Video audio recorder, record events and calls happening in the community when needed. Financial reporting manager, prepare and present financial reports to the community. And the last one is budget manager, prepare and present. There's a mistake here. The purpose should be a different one. I have it in a different document. I'll just make that fix. But those are the 20 roles that are suggested right now. So I don't know. It would be really interesting to know your first impressions after listening to these roles and their purposes, and see if you think that maybe some of them shouldn't be there, shouldn't be part of these, are not critical, or maybe we are missing some other roles with critical activities to do, or just general thoughts. They would be really welcome.
One question for people. This is just like a logistics question. How do people feel about, at a certain size, having conversations gets hard. We've run into that a few times. Should we break out into some smaller teams to do this? How do people feel? Okay, let's do this. If you feel like it would be better to break out into a smaller team, do some type of emoji response right now. Otherwise, we'll stay.
I don't think there's enough context for everyone to sort of break apart. I guess we can spend 5-10 minutes on just a first thoughts temperature check, but then people should go ahead, read more carefully, and then come back with any more feedback. That's my opinion.
I tend to agree with that. I mean, I'll hop in and say I think this is like exemplary work. It's really so well thought through and categorized. And when I read it, I imagined, there's going to be, one person who has 3 or 4 of these, and it's a nice way to sort of, what I think is most important is that it really touches on accountability for roles, and it's clear to everyone what the expectations will be for roles that people take on. So, I certainly can see one person doing multiple of the roles as they're outlined, and I think it's just really, I can't commend you enough for how well thought through this is put together. I think it'll be so super useful as a reference, but also a way to set expectations and keep track of what actions are happening and what work is being done in the TEC.
I think that I would like to talk again about having some type of HR role, because eventually always in a team and with these roles there are going to be like a lot of expectations, and this HR could help on the expectation management and also on the support of the people that will be taking those other roles.
I would say again, following on from Tam, is definitely well thought out, very, very detailed. I would say, I know it's probably hard to gauge now, but maybe even like rough estimates in terms of like time, how much time some of these roles will take per week. Because obviously, like you said, some of these roles are bigger than others. So if that's the case, then would it be some roles take 15 to 20 hours per week, while some roles take you know, 5 to 10 and things like that to help have a rough estimate about, you know, how big, you know, or how much time someone's going to be taking up in a week. And then also I would say just one last thing. I don't know if it's in there, but maybe like conflict resolution, because I know, like, you know, I was part of the Gravity meeting yesterday, and they do some they're doing some great work with in terms of, like, you know, conflict resolution within DAO. So definitely, if that could be put in somewhere, I think that would be like a definitely a great help.
Yeah, I want to echo Cam. I think this is really great work there, and I really appreciate you going through and getting all the details of each of these roles as well. That's really, really important. I think I have two thoughts on this that are at the forefront, which is whether some of these are, you know, recurring tasks versus tasks are roles that are like kind of more monitoring roles. Like there's an implementation stage where you have, you know, setting up, like for example, credentials management, where you have the time we take to set it all up, and then the rest of it's just kind of monitoring. And so distinguishing between the recurring aspect of it versus just kind of like, okay, it's a one-time implementation and then we're monitoring, might be something to consider in terms of how we organize the roles. And then the other aspect of it is the I guess the dynamics of it, you know, how this will be implemented, and exactly, you know, what it means. I suppose we'll go over the scoring and stuff like that later. But yeah, I just want to throw that out there. But this is amazing stuff, Bear. Thank you.
Can I echo something that he was just saying?
Sure.
So in general, it seems to me that if we've got at least 3 different sections, we've got like so in my consulting work, for example, I charge a lot of money for my expertise up front. So I basically say, aha, you know, here are the things you need to know. And we have something for that already. It's called the advice process. So that's great. So hopefully we've done advice process, and then we have implementation, right? And then that has a different set of skills and expertise. Hopefully you would end up with kind of a plan out of the advice process. So what I would sort of like to propose is that we would have kind of a general way of sort of executing on a thing like that, where we'd say, hey, we've got advice process, and out of the advice process, we should have actually a plan and have a beautiful format actually for that, if you'd like to borrow it. But then from there, you know, you end up with a plan, and now we're implementing the plan, and then, you know, maintenance is after that. So generally speaking, it gets less expensive as you go along in terms of man hours and you know, overall cost and other things too, if you're trying to estimate that sort of thing for whatever purpose you're in. But anyway, I just wanted to suggest that maybe that might be an additional useful framework in the line of what Nate was saying.
I wanted to say that Heather from Giveth is really good in these hiring processes. So and in this like roles definition. So maybe it would be good to include her in the advice process of these documents, and hopefully, and I am sure that she will be of great feedback. Heather, she's Hanners, the handle.
I will also, like, in the details of this, I will question the need for role number 10. I feel like this is something that we probably will need later on, but in the short term, you know, in the next year or so, I don't see a lot of, you know, real need for it or use for it. But that's just my thoughts on it, since we're discussing also, you know, going back to that conversation of like, what do we need right now? 10 is the only one that doesn't fit for me.
So Bear, you still have the floor here, so I'll let you decide what to do.
Yeah, thank you, Gideon. Yeah, no, thank you, everyone. I don't know if anyone else. I'd be a really interesting to hear maybe something about from Acid and NT as part of the team. If you have anything to say, if not, it's okay, and maybe you can provide it async.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really good word out there that you made. And I also think that, as Tam says, one person can make multiple roles, and I think that a good next step could be maybe members of the community, us and many people can like select which roles you would like to perform, maybe, and then with that we can make future decisions about what's next, um, and that could help us advance more with this. But that's a really great work, Bern. The roles are very descriptive and easy to understand, and that's amazing. Yeah, I don't know if Antti has something to say.
I kind of got a quick question before Anti goes. It's just a quick question. Would there be any space for, because if one person's taking multiple roles, would there be any space for like someone either appointed or from the community like supporting them in these roles? So for example, obviously one person spearheading, let's say they take role number 9 and number 8, and then they have someone, whether it's elected or whether someone is elected, supporting them in these tasks, especially obviously these tasks are not going to be 100 miles an hour 24/7. Obviously they're going to have their ebbs and flows. So would it be advantageous to get help from the community and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Yeah, I like that, because also part of this or part of the work we've done also is it's having this idea in mind of that you don't necessarily need to do all the work by yourself, right? But you're responsible to coordinate and to, in a way, monitor that the work is being done. If someone can help you, maybe that would be a possibility to do that. Definitely, yeah. I like the idea, and I appreciate a lot all the feedback and all the ideas that everyone is mentioning. Maybe to continue and just to end this roles part for the day, I would like you to, if you're in the document, just go to the bottom all the way to a section that says role structure. In that section, you will see what is the suggested. I think this has been mentioned before. What is the suggested structure for each of the roles? Like in this document, they only have like the purpose and all the activities that they need. But in reality, the complete structure would look something like this, and what I would like us to focus on is on point number 6, especially. This is a concept that I'm trying to integrate into the roles in order to organize them, to prioritize them, to categorize them, and to help us have a more clear vision on the differences between each of the roles, because they are not the same, right? So I would really like to ask you. You don't have to probably give an answer now, but think about what components define a role, and what makes them different from each other. One of them for sure can be time required, right? Like some of you were saying, some of these roles might require you more time in the month than others. So that's for sure a component that has a big part in this. And I don't know if there are other components. If you can think of those, what I'm suggesting here is three. It's one called complexity, one called time required, and one called experience. And the idea behind this is that we could probably score each of these components for each individual role, score them, and then have come up with some sort of role score or overall score for that specific role that can really tell us how different is this role from the rest. So some of them might be more complex than the others, but some of them might require less time than others. The experience that you need for completing the activities in this role might be different, might vary from role to role. So how can we quantify with a score this and come up with a really I don't know, like say true role score that can give us some information about what you need to achieve that. Like I've been hearing Nate mention this to me a couple of days. He was looking at this idea of, for example, difficulty and variability as some other components that could play out in this score definition. So this is just more of an open question, and just to think about that. I don't know if anyone has any ideas or comments right now. If not, you can just like add it on the document or just send me a text directly. But this would be kind of like the next stage. I would like to come up with a scoring structure that works, that we all feel comfortable with. And once we have that, then maybe we could start scoring each of these roles, and I feel that will give us some really interesting insights.
I just have one question with regards to with regards to complexity and experience. Where does the how can I phrase this? Like, for example, some roles require more complex software to be used. So, for example, some require data analytics software, whether it's June or whatever, or Nano or whatever type of software. So, would that go under complexity, or would that go under experience with regards to with the score, and what software would be required what software would be required in order for someone to achieve completing the task within that role?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think we would need to come up with a definition for everything. These ones that I've suggested, the way I'm looking at it, is that experience is the one that has more to do with the specific skills, hard skills or soft skills that you would need, right? So if you need a specific software for a role, well, you need to have certain experience using that software, right? So I would probably just categorize it as experience needed for completing the role. In terms of complexity, the way I was looking at it, it's kind of hard to measure complexity. I think you need to probably rely a little bit more in subjectivity in a way, and in how much knowledge or how much knowledge do you need to have in specific areas to be able to actually fulfill the purpose of the role and fulfill the activities. For some of these roles, probably if I explain you the activities on a day, you'll be able to understand them and do them with no problem, right? But there might be other roles that you need to have prior knowledge or prior experience in a way as well, more experience, to be able to understand them, to grasp them, and to be able to complete them, right? So that's what I was thinking in terms of complexity for the role. But I don't know, there might be other ways to look at this as well. That's why it's kind of open to try to define this.
Yeah, I like experience over complexity in terms of describing those types of skills. I think I think especially depending on how we score it, it's really a matter of priorities, or it's a value statement. And I think naturally in that type of environment, we'll have a value, like we'll have a score that says we're going to value technical skills over soft skills. And I'm not sure if that's right or wrong, or if it's good or bad. I think that's something that's worth discussing. And I do think I do like the idea of experience, because regardless, soft or hard skills, like experience within a certain domain is something to be accounted for, and could capture that. I do think that the other category that I really think is really important is variability. Like how often does this particular function change? Is it kind of a simple, you do the same thing over and over again the same way every time, versus something that you have to constantly pay attention to over and over again to monitor, to execute on? I think that introduces that idea of complexity without it being such a broad catching term. But yeah, it's an interesting system for sure. And I guess at the end of the day, what my big question is when it comes to this scoring, the purpose of this is for budgeting. And if we have a set budget, that is the only thing that we have that is static. And so if we have this set amount of budget, monthly budget for this, how do we make these scores work within that budget? And so that's my other question for that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, in a way, this part of the scoring serves that purpose as well. The first purpose of it is just simply to organize and categorize roles. My idea is that based on their score, we can organize them by tiers. And that will just give us just a better visual understanding of the roles, of these 20 roles that we have. But yeah, in a next step, this will totally be related with compensation, right? Because not all roles should be paid the same. Now the problem here, and we might be moving soon to that topic, is how is this gonna relate with the project-based contributions and compensation as well, right? Because we will have these two type of compensations. One that is based on the recurring activities that are packaged as a role, but then we'll have work and tasks as part of projects that have an end date that we'll also have to find a way to compensate, and then to merge these two models together into a fair compensation overall model, right? So it is. I've been thinking a lot about that, and I've been trying on different ideas and stuff, and it is kind of not that easy to figure out. But it is, to answer your question, it is like part of the let's say part of the roadmap to achieve at certain point. Right now I just wanted to focus like trying to nail down this part, so we can start moving into these other questions that are definitely really important. Yeah.
And I just want to add one last thing for this, because I do think that I actually think the scoring, rather than being a kind of a foundational piece to inform how we compensate, should be used as a method to inform how we distribute work, and looking at individual capacities.
Exactly.
And saying, hey, yeah. And so like I think if we use it as a method for the compensation, I think that is getting away from. But it, like you said, it's a very complicated thing, and I'm excited to work, see how this plays out and works out. So keep up with everything. It's really good. Thank you.
By the way, I just shared a link that might be helpful in finding a middle point between these discussions of complexity and experience. There's already kind of an existing model for that called Ashby's Law of Requisite Variety that can help you make determinations like that. So I thought it might be a useful link to put in there and talk about. It's well known. organizational principles. So hopefully that'll help.
Thank you, Durgas. Yeah, for sure, I'll check it out. And thank you, everyone. And my plan is just to leave this document there for any feedback, async feedback, probably until Monday. If you want to add anything, from that point on, I'll keep moving with whatever we've decided to try to answer these next questions. But yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any comments. If not, I'll just pass it back to you, Guy.
Any other comments before we move on? Okay. Thank you, Bear. And also, when you're going through these roles, obviously, focus. I mean, take a look at them all, and feel free to comment on any role. But you'll see, like, in this document, there's some roles that I think I'm probably going to be more focused on, like the strategic planning and partnerships. And so I went deep on those, right? Because those are ones I think about a lot. So obviously there's going to be some in here where you'll be like, yeah, this is the thing that I care the most about. So focus there, if you have limited time. So the next thing that we want to talk about is project management. This kind of goes to the point that Durgadas was making, which is that basically, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but there's the work that Bear has just done and outlined for you all is the known processes, the stuff that we know we've got to do. It's recurring, and we have some understanding of the dimensions of that work. Then there's new stuff that's like constantly popping up, right? We need to get a new, grant proposal for Gitcoin, or we need to change the profile of, the TEC on Giveth, or, we've got to look at whatever, we've got to think about the next version of the curation service. So some of these things are small, little issues, and some of them are kind of big projects, right? And so there's as Durgas was saying, it's there is a process up front, taking the unknown and dimensionalizing it. And here in the TEC, we use advice process for that, but the advice process, just as we've talked about many times, is not a big consensus fest. It's giving people the room to take something, as a duocracy, to take a project, define it, go out and get advice from people, and then actually do it. Feel free to take that advice or not, and then actually pull the plan together. And so sometimes the plan will be what you might call a one and done. You win it, you figure it out, you solve it, and the whole thing is done. The profile is updated on Giveth, and you can say that's done, and we can mark it off as finished. Sometimes a project is going to end up with new recurring processes, workflows that we'll probably need a role for. And so there's and we're going to be getting into this in a sec, because we're going to be defining some new stuff, like our priorities for January. Some of the stuff is going to be new, and some of it is going to basically require projects to define what needs to get done and how we actually execute it. So what we're talking about is basically kind of like a project coordinator role, and that role, there's still some but basically we treat management for a particular area as a kind of a role, right? And then some of the things that we're trying to figure out, and this would be great to get input on today, because this is pretty early in the process. But the idea here is that at the beginning of the month, we would look at the things that we would agree on the projects that we want to prioritize for that month. And then each one of those projects would have a project manager. And so the idea is that going back to the budgeting idea, you can imagine our budget for the coordination team basically being kind of made up of two core components. One is the compensation that needs to go to the roles, the ongoing roles that we need fulfilled, and then the portion of the budget that is going to be for working on new projects and just, you know, whether the project is like something big, like thinking about the academy, the partnership with the academy, or it might be something that's more manageable, like how do we structure events for 2023. So so that's kind of the high level idea of the project coordinator. Yeah, I'll open it up to questions. I have a feeling there'll probably be a bunch of questions on this because this is one that we're still kind of at the early outset. And maybe Bear, let me turn it to you first. Do you have some additional clarifications or things you'd like to add on this?
Well, yeah, no, not much, to be honest. Yeah, like you say, I think it's early stages on this side of contributions. In terms of the project coordinator role, I think it's important that there's a responsible for every project that we have. How do we define that? I'm still not so sure. You know, I don't know if, for example, the initiator or like the one that has the initiative for the project should be the project manager for that project, for example, or should be, for example, always a coordinator, a member from the coordination team. You know, would that be another alternative? Or are there any other alternatives? Yeah, for me, it's more like open questions right now, and I'd also be happy to hear what everyone has to say than certainties for me.
One other thing, just before we open it up, I think to make this a little bit more concrete, let's use an example. So, we can take the curation service and interest groups as an example of this. So, curation service basically, Risha did some of the initial project management, defining what it was, and then Antti took that and finished that up, like defining what the curation service is. So that would be the project management side of it. But now curation service is moving more into an ongoing operations. And so you'll see that there's a role in there for, curation service operations. Same thing with interest groups. So Nate did the interest group 1, version 1.0 planning document. So he's the project manager on that. And then at a certain point, we'll have some agreement on what that looks like. He'll have defined all the processes, and then it moves more into kind of the operational mode. And so then that becomes more of a role. So those are two examples. And then just one more example would be like the one that, issues that pop up. So Acid Laser a few weeks ago saw that CoinGecko had our name wrong for the TEC. And so that was an issue. In that case, like it was like a mini project that I took on to just like tackle that. I probably should have put that into Clarity as just something that we could track, but that's like an issue of like a mini project that is really just more of an issue or like a task. These things can be very small or they can be very large. Okay, so let's turn it over and see if people have thoughts on any of it.
I think there's probably a distinction to be made between. Let me see. I have two things to say. First, there's a distinction to be made between project managers and the project coordinator, or however we want to call them, because projects themselves may have someone managing them, like I'm doing with the creation service, or like Richa was doing with the creation service, or like Barry is doing with some of the organizational projects, etc., etc. But this taps into the monthly organizational thing, or the monthly sprints, or whatever. Projects are not or should not be in silos. there's many things that we've worked for a long time with projects sort of in silos, and they just don't work well for multiple reasons. First of all, um, it makes more sense to have everything and everyone sort of tune in into the same frequency, and then because we don't have limited resources, we oftentimes have people working multiple projects that are the projects on the project themselves are in silos, but the people are not. And so my idea when working on or when talking with Bear about monthly organization is to have common goals and then have and then identify the projects needed for the goal and work towards them. Say, for instance, by the end of this month, we want to have 3 interest groups, something small, maybe I don't know, probably attainable, etc., etc., etc. Now, how can the projects we have now contribute to the goal? So by the end of the month, when we look back, we can say, "Hey, we achieved the goals." And maybe that means that for that month, the events are all events around interest groups or around a specific domain knowledge stuff. For creation service, maybe it's pushing or either working in the background to make the creation service um, more comfortable for interest groups, or maybe it's with content that coming out of the creation service, and so on with everything. I think that's probably a more um, I think that mentality and that way to go about things have probably more advantages. We kind of continue moving. We have very precise goals that we like. It's not like if we don't do them, people is going to get fired, But the idea is that we can look back. We know what is everyone working on. We have a common goal for a common we have a common goal that we think we can achieve, and that everyone knows what everyone is working on, etc., etc. Everything's trackable. There's more accountability, and people feel more accomplished month by month.
So I just want to say that the link that I sent you about the ash piece thing is actually part of a larger article the guy wrote about why best practices are holding you back. So it's actually worth sort of reading the whole thing. So, but it's been long my recommendation that we kind of take a Cynefin approach to say what actual approach is required from this particular thing. Do you know what I mean? So like in terms of if I'm looking at the roles, I'm going to look at the marketing and communications thing. There's nothing that's unknown about that. There's nothing complex about that. Everything about that is known, and you just need an expert, in that one quadrant of the Cynefin thing to make it so that the people who are on the simple side of the world can understand and go, yay, TEC is doing great. But, on the other hand, what Omega does, what Gravity does, what, a number of other groups that, producing cutting edge things are doing is actually complex. And so, we may need a different approach to that kind of thing in terms of what we do first and what we do second and so on. So I'm going to just continue, saying that when we're forming things like this, it's not just enough to have a common goal, but you also have to be able to accurately assess what's the correct approach in terms of complexity and so on. So anyway, I'm just going to say I'm happy to help with that wherever possible.
I will say that Durgadas introduced me to Cynefin, and I'm also a big fan of that model now. But that's just to chime in after Durgadas. I'm having some thoughts that are coming up, and maybe I'll just share them. I'll try to be quick. I also will probably have to hop off after in not too long. But I think less about describing the role, especially for project management and coordination around, but rather like, what's our process? a simple template for project scope, what's in scope, what's out of scope, what are timelines, who's impacted, who what other coordinations will it touch? I feel like just having a good template and a good process is the key to having anyone who takes on project coordination or project management be successful in it. And that there's just maybe one or two documents, sorry, I don't know if you could hear the phone ringing, and that there's like one or two key documents or key templates that we can use so that anyone who takes on managing a project, whether it's a small project for like an interest group or a larger, multi-quarter project like the merger or the combining of efforts between the TE and TEC, just should follow the same process, have some sort of the same understanding of the scope of the project, the people that are impacted, some kind of budget, who's going to be involved, when things will happen, some kind of timeline. So I think looking at that next is it's probably a nice idea, and I don't know if Clarity is the right tool for this. It could be the right tool to use this, to have some templates that are easy to replicate. There's many different tools we could use, so yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Tam. I'm going to just flash over to some of the early work on this that I know Bear was working on this, but I think NT you were too. Can you guys clarify this? But I'm just going to, this is some of what they're looking at in terms of the project templates that we would then, you can actually have this in Clarity as just kind of like something that you just copy over and over. So this would be like the task template, the project template, and then issues template. Bear and NT, do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, NT took the lead on all of those templates. They were inspired by them, and I just provided some comments and just put it on this slides doc to have them all together. But yeah, I agree with what Tam is saying. I think good templates should be really helpful to achieve this. Might also be a good idea maybe to share this link, and if people have feedback on the templates to share that as well. I don't know, NT, if you have anything to say.
Not really. Just like you, I agree with Tam. I just tagged you on a thread where we were talking about those templates to get your feedback, or anyone's feedback for that matter. But yeah, I agree. Probably the best thing to have on a project, or for whoever is managing the project itself, but also for people working on the project, or just looking around how to make sense of the project. Having some templates with some stuff clear is just useful.
Okay, so I think let's stop the discussion on this for right now. We've got some good feedback. We'll continue to iterate on this, and we'll come back to it. But I want to make sure that we have at least 45 minutes today to dive into the actual work that we need to do this month. So this is basically looking at this this coming month of January. What are the projects that we feel are the most important to try to tackle as a group? And actually, also just build on the thing that Inti was saying. I think this idea of swarming is really critical, and that doesn't contradict the idea of having somebody who actually acts as a lead. You can have a project manager who's charged with pulling the plan together, but is going to be calling on lots of other people to lend a hand. So I put in some placeholder stuff, like some things that I know have been floating around, but maybe let's start by just opening this up a little bit and seeing if there's some other things that are floating around right now that people feel like, yeah, this is also really important for right now, for this first month.
Maybe maybe I'm thinking something we could do is divide the projects. So, for example, there's some things that I think we simply cannot afford to not work on, like the academy partnership, or maybe the strategic planning or stakeholder research. Like those are things that for sure we have to make some advancements in. And then there's some projects that we have options, or we can sort of move differently. And so for the essential, I would say that we find something tangible to deliver by the end of the month. So say, I don't know, for the strategic planning, by the end of the month, we want to have a document that outlines who are the owners of each role, to say something. And then for the other projects, have something where, at least in my opinion, where all those other projects can work for the same goal. So with example I said before, say if the interest groups seem to be the probably the best way to work on. We've already made some things, and it naturally flows into like the other projects can contribute to it nicely. And so, say a common goal for the other projects is to have 3 running interest groups. Then which are the projects that we need to support that goal? That maybe the interest groups, maybe the events, maybe the Christian service, and etc. etc.
I was following. Maybe I just so I got the first part. And can you just say the second part again? Like, what? How would you describe the second cluster of projects?
I don't know what name I would put to them, but the idea is essentially, or you can say T projects or projects advancing tech engineering. I don't know. And that's a goal that we put each month to deliver something in that regard. I don't know if if that makes sense.
So, yeah.
Just really quickly, maybe a way that can help to cluster the different projects is this idea of urgent and important, or essential and important. I think everything is important, but maybe we have like the partnership, the strategic planning, the funding proposal. Those are essential and those are urgent, right? Those we need to tackle first. Yeah, so maybe that's an idea.
I will say that the TEA partnership is for me the #1 priority. I mean, just making sure that all the initiatives that we have going on in the TEC are, not in conflict with the initiatives over at the TEA, and making sure that we have kind of a clear pathway and everybody's on the same page in terms of how we're moving forward. I think is, moving those blockers or those obstacles is something that we really need to get done as soon as possible.
So I'm throwing in one other thing here, which is this idea of like if you look at the strategic planning and the TEA partnership, like those are things we're not going to get done. I mean, this is building on something Andy was saying, but it's like it's not going to get done in this month, but we need to make some like milestone progress. And maybe the other category is things that, yeah, we could actually finish by the end of this month.
I guess my thing with the TEA is associated with my own work right now with the interest groups, and so having clarity around the interest groups is something that I would really like to push for as soon as possible. If that's, even if it's not the entire TEA partnership, but just having clarity on the path forward with the interest groups and making sure that we can integrate with the study groups and not step on any toes. So, yeah.
I think I understood that, Gideon, what you said is that we won't be able to finish, of course, planning for our TEA and TEC merger, but in January, but I mean, is there any reason that we couldn't get started and start to make some pretty significant progress in the planning in January?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, what can we get done in this month on this thing that we know is going to be a longer term process, but it's kind of like breaking it up into some things that we can really get done this month. Okay, so we have a few different approaches here. This idea of ongoing versus discrete, the short term, short, medium, long term. Yeah, actually, that does. Okay, so Bear, that I think that might be a good way of doing it. Is basically it's like, we've got some things that are medium, medium meaning basically over the next 6 months. Long term meaning between now 6 months and 2 years. And so basically maybe what we're doing is we're doing a mix, always trying to do a mix of short and medium and long. And in this case, we'd have like the medium and long term would be the TEA partnership and strategic planning. Short term, maybe we're defining the interest group stuff in such a way as to say like this, like the clarification of like the version 1. And I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouth, Nate. So like, how would you? Okay, so first let's stop for a sec. Does that make sense to kind of like organize this by medium, short? Basically say there's some short-term things we want to try to get done, and then we also want to make progress on the medium and long-term things.
Yeah, I think there's short, medium, and long-term in all of those categories. So if you look at the TEA partnership, for example, there's a lot of long-term things that we should be doing, medium-term things that we should be doing, and short-term things that we should be doing. And the short-term right now, like the defining of how interest groups relates to the integration of the TE Academy, and making sure that we're in sync with the TEA, and our offerings with the interest groups are complementary to the curriculum and to the initiatives that are going on in TEA. To me, are very short term. Like I would like those are blockers for me. I don't want to go into developing these interest groups and then all of a sudden have to backtrack or change the strategy because of some type of conflict or some type of duplication of efforts. So those are some short-term aspects of the TEA partnership that I would like to see, and then the medium and long-term, that's for the people who are going to be focusing on partnerships to look at. But my immediate needs for the interest groups are short-term for the TEA partnership.
Yeah, and to add on to that, I would say, for example, using this same example that Nate is giving, working on the interest groups with the academy might be short term and also urgent because it's a blocker for Nate, right? But then you might have, for example, I don't know, token utility for their courses or something. That might be medium term and important, right? Because it's not urgent. I feel the urgent and important can also really help us to prioritize the different projects that come up, right? Because if we have, for example, in the short term, again, related with the academy, we have a lot of projects or a lot of things that we want to do. How are we going to choose which one to do or not? So I feel in that case, urgent and important could help us prioritize that and mix it together with the short, medium, long-term idea.
Yeah, I think I agree with Bear here. There's probably more information, or there's more worth to having things by priority than by timeline, because maybe we don't always have something in the short term or in the long term, but we always have a priority, I think. And so, for example, whatever the timeline it is, if there's some blockers for Nate, that's something that's top priority, and then we have to figure out which projects or which things can solve that priority to work on this month, for example. So I think if we can identify what's blocking us in general, or what things do we want to have, then we can identify whatever project it is that we need to tap into to work on to solve those.
Yeah. One thing that's occurring to me is that really urgent is almost by definition short term, right? It's like cannot wait. And important is like if we're only being driven by the urgent, then sometimes we're going to miss the important. And so the important is like making sure we have some processes in place to continue to make progress on the important stuff that may not be urgent, but that is really important that we continue to make progress on. So I feel like there's some mix of these two, that of the kind of urgency and importance, and then the short, medium, long term. And I can take this and kind of do a cut at this and come back to y'all next week with something on this.
So something to keep in mind too is that the priorities, right? So urgent and important, and however we want to call it, let's just call it priorities, can change because context changes and dynamics changes and the situation changes. And if we're doing a 2-week or a monthly scrum, like we have a chance to reevaluate the priorities every time we do our planning again. It's one of the nice things about Agile is that you're not sort of fixed with a priority that you decided 3 months ago, but meanwhile the entire context or the dynamics of the environment has changed. So the part of our process should definitely be like taking time to reevaluate. Are these still our priorities? It might have been our priorities last month, but given the things that have changed, are they still our priorities? And I would say, the thing that I feel is going to really help in move the needle for the project around the TEA and the TEC is having an owner, like the project manager, who's going to have the big picture of the legal requirements, the technical infrastructure requirements, the collaborations on token utility, the collaborations on community and interest groups, I think would fall under the community. I mean, there's so many different layers of this, and sort of having one person and one place who really has that big picture of this all the time, and uses the advice process to get opinions and thoughts and perspectives from everyone else in this group and other stakeholders of the TEA and the TEC, I think can really be the difference between like making this, the just beginning the execution of this and making it, transparent to everyone. So because it's, I think that would be helpful for people in the TEC and the TEA as well.
Other thoughts on this? I mean, I think what we're doing right now is this is kind of a meta conversation about how we choose our priorities on a monthly basis. And then we're mixing in some ideas for what we'll do in January. So are there any other comments about the process for selecting priorities, monthly priorities?
I just have two more comments. One saying that, with what you're saying about urgent and important, I think ideally the TEC should always live in the important side of things, right? Always doing important and not having to do urgent things. Because if someone has turned urgent, that means that when it was important, we probably didn't do it, right? Or we missed it. So I think we should try. I think the healthy side of it is always doing important things and not so much urgent. And the other thing I wanted to say was with what Tam was saying. Yeah, I think that's to have some space and some time, probably at the end of every month, some type of review periods where we can, have a call or whatever format we decide on having, and review our priorities, review our projects, review the progress we have, and adjust accordingly to that. Those are my 2 comments.
I wanted also to say that I think it would be really cool if we can design some ways to incentivize participation in the community. Voting apathy is something that that tends to be a thing in Web3 communities. And maybe we can incentivize voting in other mechanisms like token log, or we can also I think that we can make more surveys, use a snapshot, and all these mechanisms develop a culture in the community that keeps us engaged and participating in the decision. And also, I think that here we have representation of the community, but there's also the people that for different reasons may not be here, and we should open ways to listen to them.
Yeah, I'll say a quick word about that because I really believe in that too, Honka. It's like part of the strategic planning process will be, the goal will be a plan, simple plan, but part of it will also be an ongoing feedback process. So like a kind of a new way of having continuous listening, not just to the people who are gathered around this table and not even to the people who are active on our Discord server, but going beyond that. So this will be part of the research aspect, is like how do we have ongoing listening to the broader field of token engineering. So that's really important. And then the other piece too, this kind of goes to something that Jay Hanning-Art said earlier, which is like we're going to need with the projects, but also with the roles, like ways for people to take lead on something, but then also make space for others to contribute. And the way that we compensate those additional contributions, that's part of what we've got to figure out. And in many cases, it'll be praise, but in some cases, like we want that work to be significant enough that there will need to be some type of incentives, whether that's bounties or maybe even just setting aside a certain amount of funds to pay for things that we know need to be done. So any other comments on kind of the process? And if not, then let's turn to actually trying to lock down what it is. I mean, knowing that we won't have the process fully baked, but like this will be kind of a practice run. I think if we wait too much longer, then January will be gone and we won't actually have a plan. So let's use the remaining time, the remaining 25 minutes today, to see if we can agree upon like what the priorities are for this month. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep, totally.
Yep.
Okay, so here's what I've heard. I mean, I've heard that in terms of the important thing, this is kind of echoed all the way through, is that the partnership with the TEA seems like that's like pretty much top of the stack. Is there a general consensus of that? If there is general consensus with that, maybe you can flash an emoji of your choice. And if not, this would be a great opportunity to signal like if there's something else you think is more important right now.
Well, I mean, for me, I think the partnership and the strategic planning are really even. I think they really, because at the end they are related. They are two things related. So yeah, I would put them on the same level probably.
Yeah, I think even on a higher level, probably what our two top priorities are one organizational and then the one with the academy. Because thinking through the projects we have, strategic planning and the others are for the organization, but then interest groups that has to do with the academy. That's something we have to solve for this month. Curation service right now, probably our biggest thing is also integrating with the academy, and things like that. I would agree that probably those two are our main things to work on.
Okay. So we've got the. I don't know what we'll break this out into. Basically, the TEA, strategic planning. I think that the stakeholder research is kind of like a subset of the strategic planning. And it also is going to relate to the TEA.
And then there's also like these different issues or things that we promise from the coordination proposal. Like the praise integration, and can't remember the others, but I remember that there were a couple. Probably those are also like subcategories from the strategic planning side of things. Maybe some of them related with the TEA, right? So yeah, maybe it would be interesting to start like, I guess, gathering all of these, all of those projects or priorities that are like around, and try to fit them and organize them into one of these two main things that I think we have, right? The partnership and the strategic planning, and go from there.
Yeah, I want to second that. I think that. Oh, I'm so sorry, Derek. Go ahead.
I was just going to perhaps default to my position about the Cynefin thing. So the question is, are there things that are falling off the truck? That means we have to stop the truck, put things back on the truck, So in terms of Cynefin, that would be, your firefighting stuff. And then, are there complex things that's going to take more time, energy, and effort to kind of deal with? And then are there sort of known things that require experts? Do we have those experts? Where do we find them? And then everything else is, relatively simple. Things are known. Things just need to be placed in, buckets or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So if I was going to be making a priority, I'd probably want to look at, geez, is there an emergency? Geez, is there something really complex? Geez, is there something, that requires an expert? If not, then everything else goes into that. Do you know what I mean? So that's, for me, the use of Cynefin is, how is it that we can identify which of these things kind of follows that pattern? So maybe that's helpful.
Yeah, I was going to say that in terms of priorities, I think the funding proposal is something that we should really focus on in terms of, making sure that we've done everything that we've promised to the community, as well as showing significant progress this month. So I think this month is going to be extremely important for us. So if we need to do breakout rooms and kind of flesh this out, it might be a good idea.
One thing that's very clear is that going forward, we need to do this at the end of the month, so that, because right now it's January 5th. So if we were to wait another week to finalize all this stuff, that's not going to be good, because the month is like, we need to be able to move quickly on this stuff. And I think actually we're pretty close. Like I pulled stuff from the proposal, like what we promised, community accountability and team accountability. So like we're on track for that. Project management and governance processes. The governance stuff we're not making as much progress on, but I think that, yeah, that's probably intentional at this point. And then clarifying the relationship between voluntary contributions and praise, that probably does need some more work right now. Um,
Um,
so, yeah.
well, 2 comments. First, before breaking out, or I don't know what are we going to do. If it's okay, can everyone like I would like to change the hour of the time of this meeting, probably earlier into the week. Um, just I don't know, a quick check, send an emoji or something if you'd like, if you're okay with that, and I'll share later a little submit or something to find a new time. I think having this at the beginning of the week instead of the end may be more comfortable. At least for me, is to organize the whole week. Um, it's kind of a mental thing because I should be able to do this to organize my next week with this meeting, but I don't know. Is that fine with everybody?
I think the challenge has always been trying to find a time that works for everybody, and so, um, yeah.
Well, I'll just send a little submit on the channel on the chat later, and if we can find one, that's okay. And if not, that's cool as well.
Okay, I think if it's easy, I mean, because it's not just this crew. It's like everybody. It's like, I mean, it's mostly this crew, but so uh, I think that there's like this, there's this whole. Yeah, feel free to go ahead and do that, NT. I mean, I guess, it took a while to find these times, but yeah, because this raised another question too, which is the. Yeah, it's going to be too long to go into. Yeah, feel free to do that, and then if it's easy to find, we can do it.
Just really quick in relation to that, I also had this other idea that maybe we could also leave this call as it is, because the way I look at it and the way I feel it is that it's more like a working session, a working call. But maybe we could have earlier in the week another call, maybe a shorter call. I was suggesting maybe like a half an hour call for the coordination team. Sorry, DeFi operator, you have your mic on. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we could have maybe a call earlier in the week for the team to organize like the efforts and the work for the rest of the week, maybe on Monday, and just like a short call, really focus on organizing the week, and then we can leave this call for working session and looking at blockers and taking more time to figure things out. Just as another option.
Okay. I would prefer that if we can lock down, we have 15 minutes left. So, I think it's actually most important for us right now to spend that time, with trying to lock down this month's thing. Why don't we, try to like NT and Bear, can you like just coordinate with each other and maybe with me, and we'll talk about what's the best way to organize these meetings. I have some questions about the Tuesday meeting, so I'd like to weigh in on that too. So let's focus on trying to lock down this month's priorities. I think that we're pretty close. We know we have to define what progress we want to make on the TEA partnership. That's something that I am doing with Griff and Angela. I've got some a series of Friday calls that are starting next week, so that will help with that. And I could use some help with that work. Let me just ask this, like, who I know people are generally interested, but who is interested in that work in general? If you can like flash your an emoji.
I think like the partnership is too broad. Like if we could just say a few things we want to get done this month, maybe easier. I'm up to help with whatever I can, but I'm just not sure. It seems like there's too much on the plate there.
Okay. I don't think we're gonna have time to like break out exactly what it is. How about this? I will come back like early next week with like a rough set of things, some ideas. This is the challenge with trying to do this on the fly. I think this is why we need to actually come in meetings with a little bit more thought, because it just doesn't do justice to these projects to kind of come in on the fly. Let's do this. If we take a look at the other things, not these big ones, right? Let's say that the big ones, we need to define these a little bit more to figure out what exactly we can actually get done in this month. How about interest groups? Nate, can you clarify what it is you're trying to get done this month?
Yeah, I'll have a list, and I can get the things that are relevant for the TEA discussion for you as well. I would like to be a part of that conversation if that's possible. I'm not sure exactly when you plan on meeting with the TEA, but yes, that would be a huge priority. Right now, we're going to have the open call for interest groups, and so promoting that within the TEA, the creation of interest groups, and within our social media channels, as well as having the onboarding processes this next week is the huge priorities for the interest group development.
So let's do this. I put down TEA connections, like basically clarifying that. We'll just, we know what these rough areas are, but by next week, let's just lock them down so that we can define these succinctly and clearly, so that by the end of the month we'll know whether we hit them. But like what I just wrote down is the connections with TEA and the creation of interest groups. Is that fair?
It's perfect. Yep.
Okay. I feel like there's another thing that's kind of hanging out there unresolved, which is our events. Last month, Rex said that he'd be willing to kind of take that on and steward that along. I think I'll just have to follow up with him on that. Anybody have any thoughts on events right now?
Yeah, we've spent probably too much time or resources talking about them. At this point, I think, or at least for this month, what makes more sense is to have events as a supporting project for other things. So Nate says something about promoting the interest groups in the academy and all that. Maybe there's some events that can be also made just to support those things. But I think we've been talking about events since September. We don't know what to do with them at this point. I would try to not center around events, but rather just make events support other things, honestly, until we can find a really meaningful way to do events as it is.
Any other thoughts on that? I hear you. Yeah. The one exception is the 1 year anniversary of the launch of the TEC. I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't celebrate that.
Yes, I was thinking the same. Maybe we can do another Twitter space, like the pass we made. It had very good results also with the pull-ups. I gave like 30 pull-ups, so I think it's a good engagement. So maybe a Twitter space for celebrating that could be a great idea.
Okay. Everybody else agree on the event thing, we basically put that on ice for right now and make it, if we do anything, it's really just in support of the interest groups for this month?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right. So, the other thing that's hanging out there. So I think we've got that. I will come back with some ideas like pretty soon on the strategic planning. I'm basically going to try. My task is to kind of break up these big things into some things that we can do in January to make progress, meaningful progress. And right now, I don't know exactly what that looks like, but strategic planning is going to be, I'm thinking that right now it's basically going to be kind of like a high level frame that we put out to just very simple to get some feedback from folks. And then a kind of a process for doing the stakeholder research. Probably interviews, like a set of questions that we go out to, like like kind of the people we know are stakeholders, and then maybe use that as a way of branching out, like asking them who else we should be talking to. But I will try to define that by early next week. Can define that as one of our objectives. The question of praise, I guess it's not just praise, it's like it's more generally about this thing that Blanca was talking about. Is like, how do we incentivize other types of participation from folks, kind of more beyond just this coordination team? That was one of the big questions that came up as proposing this coordination team. So this kind of relates to bounties and praise, but right now it's just specifically praise. Bear, do you think that this is something that you could bring into the work you're doing around roles and project management?
For sure, yeah. That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, my plan, and I would say that this is part of the projects that I would be working on for this month, is to keep working on the three types of contributions that I see the TEC having: roles, project-based contributions, and permissionless contributions. And I think praise, it's there's a big relation with that in there. So yeah, I'll keep working on those three on those three fronts. And yeah, for sure, I can take on that.
Okay. So right now, what we've got is the promises from the proposal are all stuff that Bear is working on and has been working on. Interest groups, that's Nate. Events, we're basically saying no, unless it is supportive of the interest groups or is the 1 year anniversary, and we're going to have to find somebody to own if we're going to do that. And then I am going to take the responsibility for coming up with some recommendations for next week, how we can divide up the TEA partnership and strategic planning, the stakeholder research. That leaves the funding proposal. I think one of the first steps there is I could use some help maybe from you, Bear, in figuring out when exactly we got to get this done by. So it's like looking at our burn rate and then how much is left in our multi-sig.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that was another task that I had in my to-do list, to do some numbers for the team and have some forecasts or projections for how long it's gonna last, the current funds we have. So yeah, we can work on that as well.
Okay. All right. We're just about done. Any last comments here from folks?
Yeah, I'm a bit concerned we may be overestimating, and there's some things like, well, I totally get it because this was a bit on the fly, but for example, I think like at least for Bear, I think there's too much things for this month. Like I don't know, the relationship between contributions by recognized by praise and paid contributors. That's probably something like in general. I don't think we have that much to do here anyway. So probably like I'm just thinking we have to optimize for some stuff because there's too many. And then something probably for next meeting is to figure out there's some goals we should define for Twitter communications in general, and also from my side with the creation service. There's some things that tap into the TE partnership, like getting them to use the like finally integrating the creation service, and then some other things in that project. But yeah, just those two things that like I guess what I'm trying to say is I still have to define my things for the month, and then just being mindful that we this is just for 1 month. We have to optimize for a few things.
Agreed. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just I was just gonna say real quickly. Yeah, this is work that I've been already done for quite some time, and it was already in my plans. Like it's not something that that just occurred to me now. So I think there's already some progress there, and probably like we were saying, it's not a short-term thing that will be finished in this month, but at least there will be progress done in this month. And maybe what I can do is to try to specify a little better exactly what. Maybe the only thing that I would say that I would probably wouldn't be able to do is the governance processes. I think that's more tied with the strategic planning as well, and more on a medium long term scope. But the rest of them, no, I feel good with them. Yeah.
I mean, my point really is about the thing with Agile is that it centers around value delivery, and so if we are trying to get some deliveries by the end of the month, I think we generally would rather have some finished documents rather than a few deliverables of unfinished stuff. And so if there's anything you can prioritize for and have something finished and then continue working on the other thing the next month, I think that would be much better in general. But yeah, I don't know.
So we need to wrap up here. What I'd say is that the things that we promised in the proposal, we still doesn't have to all be done in January. We have February too before this proposal is due. So I think we can spread that out and just basically you just put the stuff that you know you can get done in January, and then the stuff that flow into February, you can just break that out for. Okay. We are out of time, folks. Thank you for this. I feel like this is I feel like we're getting a new rhythm, and like this is a productive call. As always, if you got feedback on how we can make this better, please put it in the coordination channel, and we'll try to just keep making these better and better. But all right, everybody. Hey, thanks for the good call.
Thanks, Gideon. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.